Welcome to the channel Learn with Danish. Subscribe and hit the bell icon.
Good morning, everybody. Have a nice and peaceful day. So, today in this video, we are going to discuss about the different genres of drama. The word genre means a particular category or any types. Okay, but so when we talk about different genres of drama, obviously we speak about the different types like tragedy, comedy, tragic comedy. So, in this video, we are going to have a closer look at what the important type or the important genre of drama tragedy is. Now, what is a tragedy? Tragedy, you can say, it is a play that ends with the death of the main character or something disaster would happen at the end of the play. If you just go through or analyze any tragedy like Oedipus Rex or Shakespeare's Hamlet, you can see that by the end of that play, something disastrous would be happening to the main character. The term tragedy was originated as from the Greek word tragedia, and this genre of drama always presents a serious subject matter of human sufferings and always have such similar events in a dignified manner. You can analyze if you have learned the drama Oedipus Rex, you can understand. So it's a very serious subject matter. Human suffering is there in a very dignified manner. The whole thing is presented and it ultimately picturizes a disastrous ending for the protagonist. In Western theatre, Poetic is the first treatise on tragedy written by Aristotle during the 14th century BC. Aristotle explains tragedy like this: it is an imitation of an action that is serious and also as having magnitude, complete in itself, incidents arousing pity and fear, wherewith to accomplish the catharsis of such emotions. So, the idea Aristotle was trying to put forward is that a tragedy is a play where the actor undergoes a series of an action which is having a magnitude, and it also has instances which arouses pity and fear, and ultimately accomplishing the catharsis of the tragic hero. Attaining catharsis is the ultimate aim of a tragedy. And the tragic hero should be a noble or a more better in order to create the magnitude of the tragedy. When we consider the drama Oedipus Rex, Oedipus is a king, isn't it? So, suffering of a king is much more counted than the suffering of any ordinary person. So, the magnitude of the tragedy is elevated, the tragic hero being a noble person. So, you can always find that tragic hero in a tragedy is always a noble person. It is never an ordinary person. And that is why usually we see in classical tragedies always the kings, queens, and gods are the usual characters, which is generally picturized in tragedy. Moving on to certain terminologies that Aristotle has used, the first term, hamartia. So, when you learn tragedy, these are the few terms that you have to know regarding the topic. The first one, hamartia. Hamartia is the tragic flaw that is committed by the protagonist or the main character. One common form of hamartia in Greek tragedies was hubris, the pride or overweening self confidence that leads a protagonist uh, a divine warning, to disregard a divine warning, or to violate an important law. So in Oedipus Rex also we can find hubris, or the tragic flaw of Oedipus, which caused his downfall, that he was trying to escape from his destiny. And after a series of action, uh, suddenly he discovers the fact or recognizes his own identity. That point or that term is called anagnosis. Here, Oedipus discovers the fact that he himself is the murderer of his father and has married his mother. So, his identity is revealed. And this sudden discovery of fact or recognition of identity, and this part is called an ignorasis. And the next term is peripeteia, the sudden reversal of fortune of the protagonist. Moving on. Next, you need to know a bit about Senecan tragedy. Senecan tragedies are the tragedies written by Seneca the Younger. He was a Roman Stoic philosopher and dramatist. He was also tutor to Nero, the fifth emperor of Rome. Seneca has written lots of tragedies. He had written about 10 tragedies, and those tragedies were mainly to be recited rather than acted. Another thing which is a bit paradoxical about Seneca is that rather being stoic, his dramas include elements like murder, revenge, ghost, mutilation, and carnage is represented. Mutilation means causing damage to something, and carnage means killing a lot of people. So it is a bit strange for him, being a Stoic philosopher, writing tragedies with subjects like these of revenge, ghost, and carnages. Stoic philosophy is a philosophy of personal ethics, which speaks more about the path of happiness and things. So it is a bit a strange thing to be noted that his philosophy and the theme of his work doesn't go hand in hand. It's a bit irony. You can find a bit ironical thing in here. But as far as the Elizabethan theatre is concerned, Seneca is a very great influence on Elizabethan theatre. We can see a lot of Shakespearean dramas borrowing elements of Senecan tragedy. And you can the best example is Hamlet. You can find lot of tragedies of Shakespeare which borrowed Senecan ideas, or which had employed Senecan techniques in their plays. Moving on to the medieval tragedies, most of the tragedies were based on simple stories of person of high status who is brought from prosperity to wretchedness by an unpredictable turn of the wheel of fortune. For example, in the Monk's Tale in the Canterbury Tales is such a tragedy. Moving on. When we talk about the Elizabethan tragedy, it owed much to the native religious drama, that is the miracle and the morality plays. It also incorporated Senecan techniques during those times. And the first English tragedy was Gorboduc by Thomas Sackville and Thomas Norton, which was written in 1562. Following that, you can find lots of tragedies which incorporated Senecan subject and themes, which were generally called as revenge tragedy or tragedy of blood, which is modeled on Senecan themes or elements. And the most important one was Thomas Kit's Spanish tragedy, which was written in 1586. And obviously, Shakespeare's Hamlet and Webster's Duchess of Malfi, were the most important one, or notable tragedies of those times. Moving on. So one thing you need to note here is that by the close of 17th century, tragedies were written in verse, and the protagonists were men of high rank, and their fate affected the fortune of the state. And later on, by the 18th century, you can find slight changes that it has underwent. The character is not from a high rank. The middle class protagonist started to appear, and it was also written in prose. And by the close of the 17th century, the tragedy was written in verse. So you need to note here is that what to be noted here is that by the 18th century, the popular form of tragedy was mainly written in prose, and the protagonist was also from the middle class family. And this type of tragedies, which was popular by the 18th century, which was written in prose and with characters which belong to the middle class, was called bourgeois tragedy or domestic tragedy. And one of the notable one domestic tragedy was George Lillard's The London Merchant, or The History of George Barnwell, which was written in 1731. And even though tragedy has underwent slight changes in its theme and in its form, by the 20th century, through the work Murder in the Cathedral, written by T.S. Eliot, the tragic drama was almost similar to the back old Greek tragedy. It was also written in this particular work was written in verse, and also had a chorus, okay, and incorporated elements of miracle and morality plays. So with that, I come to the end of this video. I have tried to include all important points regarding the topic tragedy, one of the genres of drama. In the next video, I'll be discussing on the other genres like comedy, tragic comedy, and so on. With that, I wind up the video. Thank you.